Hey GPRS, it's Chris Moore, and we are, you may not know this, but in our 20th year of operation as a company. And in that place, we want to take some time, step back, and consider where we come from. When Matt first started the business, he decided he wanted to be the biggest small company he could be. And so that origin story is really important to us because that's what grounds us in who we are today. So what we want you to hear today is a bit about where we've come from, and also a bit about where we're going. But where we come from may not be the story you would expect. It starts with a stroke of luck, some encouragement from his dad, and the support of his wife. We're excited for you to listen into the story.
Yeah, so I'm very blessed to have my dad, Skip Aston, as a father, and the example that he set as a kid. He started his business, and he was a one-man shop when he started back in 1980. I was 3 years old, and it was concrete cutting. And so he hired people and he built up this concrete cutting business. And I looked at my dad as kind of my role model. All through high school and college, I would help on their jobs, and I really screwed up on a few of them. But that was mostly my job was to catch cores, remove concrete, and to shop vac alongside the drill or the blade when they're cutting and drilling on a concrete slab. That's really where I was most exposed to the dangers that come along with saw cutting and core drilling, mostly with having to do with electrical being buried or embedded, within or immediately below a concrete slab. I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker and work in finance, work in some tall building in New York or Boston. And I worked in finance for a little bit after I graduated college. And I was a financial analyst for a large, automotive company here in town. Dana Commercial Credit was the division that I was part of. But I was a little disappointed. So I was frustrated, and then my wife called me, right in that same time and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this, but I'm pregnant." And I was at my cube at work and very happy and very uncertain of, what's this going to mean? And I'm a numbers guy, so I started thinking about numbers right away. Knowing my wife well, I knew she wouldn't go back to work as a teacher when our baby was born. And so I started just putting some thoughts together, and I thought, okay, the best thing I can do, is probably go work with my dad.
Yes, the beginning is where it gets fun. I was pregnant, huge pregnant, due soon. I had just quit my job, thinking that my husband had a job, and he came to me a couple weeks before I was about to give birth, like 2 weeks, and said, "I would like to quit my job and start my own company." I was like, "What? So no one has a job and we're going to have a baby in a couple weeks? That's a great idea." And I remember just kind of panicking about it and praying about it. And I didn't want, to hold him back. So I said, "Let me give birth while we have health insurance so I can get that up and rolling. And after we have this baby, then let's do this."
And so I went, set up a lunch with my dad. We went to Charlie's restaurant on Monroe Street. And then I said, "Hey, Dad, how would you feel about me coming to work with you in Ohio Concrete?" And he said, "Matt, that'd be great."
He had approached me for work, and it was the first time he had approached me to work for Ohio Concrete Sawing. And, my answer was any father would like to work with their sons. And but let me figure this out. I don't want to offend any of my long-term employees. I want to find a spot that would fit.
And I thought, okay, that sounds good, Dad. And about a week later, he called me up and wanted to meet up again. And he said, "Hey, I think this is wrong. I don't think that we should do this. I don't think you should come into business with me." He said, "I really think you should do something on your own." And okay, what changed? And I was irritated at the time. Man, what's wrong with me? This is my dad. He just said yes a week ago. Now he's changing his mind. He knew me well, and he said, look, I think it's going to bug you. No matter how well you do, it's going to bug you that you didn't start this, and you're always going to wonder, could I have done this? Could I have done it from the ground up? And so he said, I think you should do something on your own. So just kind of put all my cards on the table and said, look, I have no idea what I would do, and I don't have that much money saved up. So he gave me a loan, and he gave me a magazine. And in that magazine, there were some advertisements for new services, new technologies, and one of the advertisements was Geophysical Survey Systems, who we've bought most of our equipment from over the last 20 years. And they talked about this ground penetrating radar. So my mind went back to this grocery store job that I was on, where we had to cut this trench from just behind the cash registers. Just think of a typical grocery store, and we're going down the freezer aisle. And so we've got to cut this trench right down the middle of the freezer aisle. It's probably 75 or 80 feet, and we get probably 5 or 6 feet in, and I see sparks fly, and the saw shuts off, the lights go out, everything in the store goes dark. It's 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. I look at the guy and say, what happened? And he said, well, we just cut through power, and we're done for tonight. So again, he calls the superintendent. The superintendent says, well, how'd you cut through the power? And he says, look, you guys laid it out, and it was running right through the middle of your layout. So my mind sees this advertisement for this ground penetrating radar, and I went back to that specific job and thought, okay, if they would have used this on that job and laid out the electrical prior to the saw cutting taking place, that whole incident's avoided. I bet I can build a business out of doing this. So I called my dad up and said, hey, I saw this ground penetrating radar thing, and I'll learn how to do it, and just get it started.
And I saw the GPR unit being demonstrated, and it was like a eureka moment. Quit your job, we're going to go in the radar business.
He quit, and there we were, brand new baby, no jobs. Oh gosh. I remember when he wanted to hire the first person, I was scared to death, John Kessinger, because I thought, how are we going to pay you? And how is this going to work? And what if it doesn't? And we just hired a friend. And then it just worked. And then it kind of just kept happening where it just worked. And I'll never forget, Jamie Harmon was probably one of the funniest hires, because and the dumbest, because they were like our best friends, and we hired them and moved them away from us. And that's what I mean by the dumbest. It was a great hire, but I remember Holly called me, his wife, and said, we're so nervous. Do you think this company will survive? Do you think it's a good idea for him to quit his job as a cop and take this job because it's such a new company? And I remember being like, Holly, I know, I get nervous, but I think it's going to be okay. And he quit his job and took the job with GPRS, and it's like, it just was a blessing now. It started in our first house, right in the living room. He would work at night while I would hold the baby, and he would spread everything out on the floor and work away. And then every morning he'd wake up at the crack of dawn and take off and go sell all day.
And within a couple weeks after that, we were flying up to New England and doing the trading at GSSI. Yep. I think he's become their biggest customer by far. And I think I can say this, Matt would admit that he really had no clue what we were talking about as we were flying up there.
And that was the biggest challenge, was creating this awareness. I went to all the companies in Toledo, engineers and contractors, basically just using my dad's company's Ohio Concrete's customer list. And they're like, yeah, okay, we've never heard of this, but maybe we'll give it a shot. You can come into the office and show us how it works. And it didn't take too long to do that in Toledo. So then I started going up to Detroit and Ann Arbor and realized quickly, hey, this is a much bigger city, much more opportunity for this, and started getting a few demonstrations. And the demonstrations is what led to opportunities to do these jobs regularly and kind of build a customer base. And I spent the next 5 years in the field, going up to Detroit and Ann Arbor almost every day to do the work up there. We've talked about over the last year and a half or so in GPRS, we're capable of more than what we know. And I didn't think I was capable of starting a business or introducing this new technology to a market. And but we are capable of way more than what we give ourselves credit for.
So now you've had a chance to hear Matt's origin story, where this thing started for him. But the next phase of the business is equally as exciting, and that's the phase of the next team members who join GPRS, the early adopters, if you will.
Mostly going back to when I started is what comes to mind, like day one being in the office. He had an office in the basement of his dad's company. He just sat me down, like I just started, and the onboarding was just like, he showed me some little notes and stuff he had made about how GPR works and what slabs look like and stuff, and he's like, do you know what rebar is? And I'm like, no. Like, I didn't even know anything about how concrete works or anything like that. And he handed me like a tape measure. He's like, oh, I've got an extra tape measure, like you should take this, you're gonna need that on jobs. I'm like, okay. Like, I just remember him handing me this tape measure. I think I still have it at my house. Like, there's a yellow tape measure that he just happened to find, and here you
go. Long days, long weeks. When I started, there was, I think, 7 of us in the field, and we just had a large area to cover. I mean, there was times where I would go to New York to help out Jamie Harmon, or out west to help out Jason Wachter. It was a lot of traveling, and or I would have to have different guys come in to help out in Texas. It was such a tight schedule, and there wasn't many people to help that were an hour away. It was a flight, so it was just trying to meet customer needs when they needed the work done, and just trying to accommodate the customers the best we could.
It's hard. I was assigned to start in the Northeast region, so a lot of traveling, a lot of times I'd be in New York or somewhere on a job, and I'd get a call from Jason Wachter on the West and have to hop on a plane, go help him with a job out there, then come back, or we'd pick up a job in Louisiana and I would have to fly there. So there's a lot of travel and uncertainty of where you're going to be the next day.
Just to think of where GPRS is now from when I started, I would say in many ways it's still the same. It's just a lot smaller in 2008. I think when I started there were about 10 of us in the company, roughly, but everybody was always willing to help out, and that's still the way it is today. And no, at the time it was just me, right? So let's get the team to 5, and then let's get the team, to 10. You look now, it's like, boy, we could hire 5 people could be starting just today. 10 people probably start today. Every week. It's just growing so fast.
I met Matt in 2002, and I liked Matt, and I knew that we needed to do something and perform to fulfill this idea, this contract. So I was going home in the evenings and reading up HTML for Dummies. So I'd be reading it and have everything laid out on my desk at home. I'd be taking notes. So I was literally only 4 hours ahead of Matt when it came to building these websites. And at the time, I was really bad at web design. I still am. And so the website would be really, really ugly. But I realized that when Matt came in, he really didn't care about how the website looked either. He just cared about the stats and the traffic. As long as I could be showing increase in traffic, Matt was happy and we could make him a millionaire someday. So and here I am today, 2021, privileged to be here. Still working on the website, which looks a little bit better these days.
Well, fondest memories, really, I guess I'm the only one that can say, I was on the Westin Hotel project, which is famous for the One More Stop, the first One More Stop with Matt Aston. It was the Westin Hotel project, and I'll never forget, I was in my first week of training. Matt picked me up, and we drove up to the Detroit airport, and he introduced me to the Westin Hotel project, where he had done a lot of post-tension scanning. And this is about 7 months later, after the infamous story where Matt did his one more stop in late December, and met the contractors to get some work that really propelled GPRS, out of the gates.
At the first big job that Matt had at the Westin Hotel in Detroit, and he was very frustrated. I said, Matt, they wouldn't have you back if they weren't interested. You've gone back and talked to the mechanical contractor, the general contractor, the engineers, and I said, there's obviously an interest there, because they're not going to take the time to talk to you. After he was like halfway into the project, he was walking up one morning, and the guy was standing there, the superintendent, with his hands on his hips, and Matt thought, oh, I screwed up. And he gets up there, and the guy goes, kid, I want to tell you, we had no idea what we were going to do until you showed up with that dumb machine. and they ended up drilling 900 holes. After that morning, when he saw the guy standing there and he was expecting bad news, I think that was the day he realized this could really work. There's a need here, and there could be, I think this is a good idea.
So by now, you've all heard about the One More Stop story, where Matt was able to stop on the job site, and a lot of who GPRS is today is because of that stop. And I have plenty of stories about stops that I made, one more stop on the way home. So when I first got out to Denver, it was very daunting. I had a box of business cards and a cell phone and no jobs. I really had to focus on doing sales and meeting anybody I could and doing demos. And I kind of got the nickname Dora the Explorer because I used to put a backpack on and fill it with notepads and pens and business cards and walk up and down the streets looking for construction sites. And so took about a year, but the Dora the Explorer paid off. And so if you look back and think about if those stops weren't made, where would we be? What opportunities did those stops create for other people? And I guess the challenge is we look at our next 20 years. What stops are you going to make? As we have the One More Stop initiative in place, what opportunities can we create for other people to come on this team and experience this great company as well?
Throughout 20 years in business, we've had the chance to interact with many team members. And some of those team members have left a great mark on who we are and have really been a part of making this culture what it is today that you experience. And we want to share some of those touching stories with you now.
My fondest GPRS memory is probably very, very bittersweet. It's not necessarily a happy story, but my brother was a project manager in New Orleans from like 2012 to 2014. In 2013, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And the support that the people who were the directors at the time gave to him was incredible. Matt put out an offer, they raised money for him, and Matt put out an offer to match whatever everyone raised for him, and they raised $10,000, and then Matt matched that personally. He ended up, that was 2013, he ended up passing away in 2014. But that's the most incredible story I can give you. Even though it's a terrible story, it's the most incredible story.
I'm just thankful for GPRS. They've molded me. They shaped me in one way or another. I love the people here. I couldn't ask for a better company to work for, that's for sure.
Matt actually is the reason for my success and our success at WebWorks, because when I left that company, Matt said, well, if you take the leap, I'll give you all of the work that you would ever want. And all the work that I have with Jim will go to you because you're the brains behind the operation. And that meant a lot, because that gave me the confidence to jump out on my own, and it was the best thing I ever did.
this is my favorite place. Toledo Christian was fun and it was a family, but this has just been fun. Besides, I really enjoy the work and watching it grow. It's been amazing.
I want to thank Matt for this opportunity. I mean, he's invested so much in me and the company and different things like that it's just it's crazy to me to like not going. I'm not a college graduate or anything. Didn't know really where I was, and he sat down with me at my interview at it's a place called Jimmy John's. Sat down at Jimmy John's and just talked with me for about an hour and a half, and I was working in a warehouse, and this guy owns this company, president of his own company, and my friends are successful there, and had a conversation with me and just took a chance, and 10 and a half years later, here I am still like working at it hard, and he gave me that opportunity. It's it's very impressive. It's pretty cool that he's got to do that for people.
It's unavoidable. I drive around Atlanta, I drive around Birmingham, Savannah, Montgomery, any of the cities where I've done significant amounts of work, and I can count buildings and say, that's my building, and that's my building, and that's my building. These are my projects. I own them, even though I scanned like 4 Cordura locations on it. I was there before there were walls up, and it's such a cool sense of ownership of those projects and relating to the city and being ingrained in its history like that.
I'm really excited for the future here at GPRS and all that we're growing to be, and it's really fun to be a part of this team that is being aggressive and are looking at challenging each other and keeping each other accountable to make those goals. So I love it here. I love being a part of that team and putting forth my efforts to make that happen. And being there with Matt and having him at the helm has been great. The confidence that he has in us is really something special and unique that I'm grateful to be a part of.
We love sharing those touching stories with you. And they're some of the stories we tell when we gather around a dinner table to discuss what's happened in 20 years of business at GPRS. But those dinner tables are never left without sharing a few of the funnier moments. And so we want to share some of those stories with you now too.
And the story that Taryn tells about someone grabbing a business owner's printer for payment, that was me. So when we first started, Matt had called me and said, hey, there's a company there that one of the other guys had worked for that we hadn't received payment on. He said, do you mind swinging by there and try to get payment? So I swung by there once. They said the owner wasn't there. I swung by there a second time, said he wasn't there, and I was just getting tired of the runaround. So I Googled the company and I found the picture of the owner, and he'd been sitting there every time. I saw him sitting at his desk every time I was there. So I went back, and I was a little perturbed this time, and I said, hey, is so-and-so here? They said, sure. He's going to be in later this afternoon. Just leave your card. And I'm like, I did that every time, and he's sitting right there. So I just walked in the office, and I started talking to the guy, and I said, I've been here 3 times. I'm just trying to collect payment on this. He goes, well, we can't pay that right now. So I unplugged his printer that was sitting there and picked it up, and I said, well, this will count as half payment. And he's like, no, put that down. He called some lady over, and the lady came over, and he said, cut them a check. And she wrote out a check, gave me the check. I left, and I was so excited that I collected this money. I was getting ready to call Matt, but my phone rang, and it was Matt. The owner of that company had called him and said, hey, we paid your bill. Don't send the big guy here no more. And we just had a laugh about that. But we did collect the money, so I was happy about it.
I have a memory of being in New Orleans with Josh Gross, Jeremy Perino. I think it was Jacob Cunningham even at the time, a few years ago, and they took me to eat crawfish for the first time, and they were teaching me how you suck the juice out of the head. Do you know this about crawfish, Liz? Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. Yes. So they're like, oh yeah, everybody does it. And I was like, I don't think everybody does do this, guys. Like, and they just do like this, and they tip their heads back and they suck the juice out. And I'm like, so I tried it, and then I decided definitively, certainly not everybody does it, because I'll never do that again in my entire life.
So a funny story I have about Matt Aston was when I was actually working with him in the basement of Ohio Concrete, and I'd review with him the Google Ads traffic. A hefty budget for us at the time was to spend $300 a month. And I remember Matt looked at me and he said, here's a credit card, spend whatever it takes to stay at the top of Google, make it happen. And he goes, well, how much do you think that would be? So I went over and I, looked at my software and really bashfully looked over at him and I said, that might be like $2,000. $2,000. I thought, man, that is so much money. For a month of AdWords Click, there's no way Matt's gonna go for that. He goes, yeah, no problem, make it happen. And, the next month I show it again to Matt, and he says that spend more, spend more, spend more. And actually I did the math this morning, and now we spend $2,000 in about 12 hours in our Google Ads campaign.
So when I first started my first job, it was at Mount Sinai Hospital. They told me to be there at 5 o'clock. I got there early. I had to park at the very top of the parking structure. I get down there, meet the contact. We go meet with the engineers, and they say, well, the room's not going to be ready till 9 o'clock. I said, no problem, no problem. Ended up hanging around with the site contact. We went to dinner. We get back into the hospital, and the building engineers wanted to talk and see the technology and what it can do. And I said, no problem. So go down there, and I start doing a demonstration, and the screen is just, we call it ants marching. It's really scattered. And I'm like, I'm having a heart attack, right? The cell phone service was terrible. So I got on a landline. I called Matt Aston. I said, Matt, I'm having ants marching on my screen. What am I doing? And he said, hey, the kill switch on the 1600 kill switch. I was like, forgot all about that. So I tape up the kill switch and I start doing the demonstration. At that time, there's probably 10 engineers that were surrounding me. I'm showing them on a concrete wall down in the basement of Mount Sinai, and the demonstration went well. In fact, they used us. I think they still use us at that hospital, but ended up doing the job. I'm walking up, the flight of stairs at the parking structure. I get to my truck. I put all the equipment in, and ended up throwing up. I ended up throwing up because, and here's the thing, baseball wise, sports, I've been an athlete my whole life. Under pressure, usually I perform well, but I was just so nervous. It was like a release, and I threw up right at the foot of my truck, which was kind of embarrassing because as I'm rolling down, this parking structure, I see the gentleman that's cleaning up the parking structure, and I rolled down. I looked in my wallet to see if I had any money, and I ended up tipping him whatever I had in my wallet because I felt terrible. I said, hey man, I appreciate everything you're doing. I had an accident up on the top deck and tipped him $40, and I had to get out of there. I was so embarrassed.
Thing that I still laugh about, for a while we would have those text messages that would be sent out to the company, to the field. And we give Chris Moore a hard time about his last field company-wide text message, reminding everybody that it was TNA Friday, and him quickly realizing what he had sent out. He had meant to say, listen, it's time and attendance time. Make sure we approve the time cards and get it out. But when you send out a text message to the entire company, it's TNA Friday. We give him a hard time on that a lot.
In one of those trips, I had my iPod. The game was, hey, here's a song. Can you name the artist or whatever? And so I would go through what I had. He would go through what he had, depending who was driving that day. And he was pretty good at the game. But there was a Kelly Clarkson song that came on called Since You've Been Gone. So we're driving down the road, and I was into Kelly Clarkson for whatever reason. I don't know. I like some of her music, and fairly eclectic. See, this is actually more embarrassing about me than it is anything funny about Matt, as I realize what I'm about to say. But so the chorus of the song came on, Since You've Been Gone. And I just started singing at the top of my lungs. And I remember Matt looked at me, and it was like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing this right now. I'd crossed some threshold of comfortability we had in the car. So he still tells that story on me every now and then.
So we hope you can see how much we've sought to live out that idea that we would be the biggest small company. We also hope you understand that the best is yet to come. If you've hung around with us for any amount of time, you've heard Matt say something like, we need to widen the gap, maximize our potential, knock the cover off the ball, provide that sensational service. And all of these things are built around this idea that there's somewhere greater where we can go and somewhere further down the road where we need to travel as a company. Matt often will use the baseball analogy as he thinks about where GPRS is in its life cycle as a business. And literally for 10 years or more, I've heard him say something like, we can't be much more than 3 or 4 innings into the game. And every time we talk about it, it's still the same 3 or 4 innings into the game, because every year our vision is widened for what this company can become. So we're excited to have you coming along with us as we celebrate this 20th anniversary, and at the same time, we're more excited about the next 20 to come.
What a wild, fun, amazing, life-changing ride GPRS has been. When I left engineering, I was terrified, right? Like I did not want to lose my place in that world, and I was afraid of what that meant. I'm going to go locate, I'm going to leave engineering, I'm going to go locate utilities. It just doesn't make sense. And from where we have gone from that day has just paid off in spades, in experience, and just happiness. Just like, it's been amazing.
And I'm excited to see where we go in these newer ventures, but I'm also very grateful and very thankful for everything GPRS has given to me and my family throughout the years.
Thanks again, Matt. I really appreciate it. I wouldn't be here without you. Cheers to a wonderful 20 years and to 20 more. Thanks, buddy.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what the next 20 years look like. This journey has been so incredible so far. I'm hesitant to even try to put a number on it or anything like that. I just want to see what we can do. It's really exciting.
Hey GPRS, as we look back on 20 years, it's really fun to see how far we've come. We've laughed, we've cried, we've learned, and we've grown a ton. I think now's a good time to look forward towards the future and what this company will bring. There's no guarantee of future success just based on what we've done in the past. But if we link arms and continue to march forward, our future is pretty bright. One of the things I like to talk to the team and ask the question, I say, who's got it better than us? And I think we know the answer is nobody. So here's to the next 20 years. Let's go.
It's been a privilege and honor to work with Matt and the other guys in the company. It's outstanding the amount of success that Matt has built, the envision, and given the confidence to us when we started early off, and just being a tremendous leader for over the years. Last thing I'll finish up with is just congratulate Matt on 20 years, and just a incredible opportunity, and great job.
No one has worked harder than Matt, and I've watched it. But I've watched all his hard work pay off. And I've watched him keep God first, and I've watched him just work so hard. I feel like I'm gonna cry. He's the best husband, best boss, best everything, and I love him. So I'm proud of you. And look at what happened over 20 years. It just blows my mind. It blows my mind. I cry easy as my kids. So, sorry. It doesn't take much to get tears from me. Yes, thank you for doing this. And I love you, Matt, and I'm proud of you. Happy 20 years. Woo!
Matt, I think I've been really proud of what you've accomplished in the last 20 years. I have no idea, actually I don't know I'll be here in 20 years, but I'm sure what happens over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years will build on what you've done in the first 20, and I wish nothing but the best of success for you. And I'm confident, based on your track record, that the next 20 years will be as exciting as the last has been. So, good luck.